I'd like to call the order the Development Review Commission meeting for Monday, February 3rd. Could we take the roll call, please?
Shear.
Here.
Polson.
Here.
Berardi.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Frankel.
Here.
Silent.
Here.
Arthur.
Here.
Thank you. Our first order of business is the council report, and our liaison now is Theresa Kohlhoff, and she emailed her report into us and asked me to read it. So the year started off with citizens talking directly to the councilors about their concerns. These range from new natural parks petition, which will probably not have enough signatures to be on the mail ballot, the need for a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, and the location of the swimming pools. We may end up with funding for a modified Woodmont Park. That bid will be accepted, if at all, in April. There is now a 2020 initiative whereby staff will give council a more detailed breakdown on the differences between costs of staffing a project in-house by city employees versus letting a contract to a consulting group. We had a goal-setting retreat, which ended up with broad agreements of good boardmanship, policies, goals, and initiatives. None of these are surprising or deeply divergent from the goal setting in the past. In a split vote, the council agreed to authorize $450,000 to enable staff to get figures on various ways to move forward on the Tryon Creek water treatment plant. There are a couple of options. One is to allow the city of Portland to upgrade the plant and we pay our fair share, or to build the plant on our own, either through a public-private partnership development or through public bonding. She attended the MPAC Metro Policy Advisory Committee and was elected second chair for this year and chairman for next. Our first meeting and the theme throughout the rest of the year will be equitable development, i.e. placemaking within the cities. To that end, we heard from Proper Portland, Centro of Cornelius, Fourth Plane Forward in Vancouver, and the Rosewood Initiative. We also heard from Atlanta. We heard an executive speak of the remarkable progress they've made over the last 25 years in the Eastlake community. The secret is mixed income housing, a cradle to college education pipeline, and a community wellness program. I apologize for not being here tonight, as I'm a member of the ODOT Region 1 Advisory Committee for Transportation, and this is our first quarterly meeting tonight. That's Councilor Kohlhoff's report. Next order of business is the minutes. Gentlemen, there's 3 sets. Before we get into them, I wanted to ask, just as a, does anybody have any changes to them? We could accept them all at once. You have none?
Yeah, you can vote on all minutes unless there's a motion to sever.
So I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes for July 15th, August 5th, and August 19th in one.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Kat, could you call the?
Shear.
Yes.
Polson.
Yes.
Berardi.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Silent.
Yes.
Arthur.
Yes.
I believe we don't have anything else except for the public hearing for LU 19-0046, a request for the following: a conditional use permit modification to add field lights to the multi-purpose practice field in the northwest corner of the school building at Lake Ridge, a development review permit to construct a hitting barn along with minor athletic field improvements, and the removal of one tree to accommodate the improvements. The site is located at Lake Ridge High School, 1235 Overlook Drive, number 21E160000100. Our staff coordinator is Johanna Hasty, senior planner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before the staff report, I'll advise of the procedures. This land use request is based upon the applicable criteria and standards. The staff report lists the criteria and the staff identified by staff applicable to the request. It was available online and is available at the table at the side of the room. You must identify any applicable criteria you believe applies. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria. Please specifically identify to the commission the criteria or standards you are addressing so the commission may consider your testimony in relation to the criteria or standards that you are addressing. If you do not identify the criteria or standards you are addressing, the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you are testifying about and may not consider your testimony in its decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. The hearing process will be as follows. First, a presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes, then testimony by parties in support of the application, followed by testimony by parties opposed to the application, and finally testimony by those neither for nor against the application. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person except to the applicant, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government or government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. Following that would be the applicant's rebuttal up to 5 minutes, and then commission deliberation, including a statement to the applicant by the commission of any proposed conditions of approval different than contained in the staff report, and the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval proposed following commission deliberation. The time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the commission. Testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses on behalf of or which are part of the presentation by a person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It is assumed the persons are testifying on their own behalf unless they expressly identify the recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government or government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization they are representing. A potential conflict of interest is declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of their business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC member does not have a known present or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It is possible that a future business relationship could arise in the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or business of the DRC member personally, or through a relative as defined in ORS 244.020. At this point, I would ask the commission members to please declare if you've had any ex parte contacts, whether you've had a site visit, if you have any bias on the application, and any additional financial conflicts of interest in your business or employment. Mr. Frankel, pardon me.
Jason,
It's been so long.
it has been a while. Jason Frankel, branch manager here at a local bank right down the road. I have had no site visit, no other ex parte contact, no bias, no financial conflict, and I, again, have not visited the site.
Mark Zylan, a small business owner. I have not had a site visit. I have no ex parte contact. I have no bias or financial interest.
Randy Arthur, I'm an attorney and of counsel at the Portland, Oregon law firm of Bulvenhauser Bailey, PC. I did run a conflicts check on identified known principles for this land use application. One of those is Janet Turner Engineering, LLC. I did note that we have a Janet Turner listed as one of our clients. I don't know if it's the same Janet Turner. And Geo Design, Inc. Is also listed as a known principal for this land use application and is listed as an adverse party to one of our other clients. Neither of these matters pertain to this application. And as of counsel, I do not derive any compensation from the outcome of this application, nor do we practice in this area. I have had no ex parte contacts, no bias, have not made a site visit, and have no financial disqualifying factor.
My name is Jeff Shearer. I'm a retired contractor. I have no ex parte contact, no financial considerations or biases. I have made multiple site visits because I walk my dog there on a daily, weekly basis.
My name's David Polson. I'm a civil engineer. I've made no site visit this time, but I'm very familiar with the property. I have no biases. I have worked with geodesign as a subconsultant on many projects, but not on this one. And I have no conflicts of interest.
My name's Craig Berardi. I'm a financial consultant. I'm familiar with the site. Kids played soccer, football, lacrosse on the adjacent field, so I'm familiar with it. Haven't been there in some time, but familiar with the area. No ex parte contacts, no bias, and no financial conflicts.
My name is Kirk Smith, and I'm an attorney with the law firm of Buckhalter, Aderwin. I've not visited the site. I have no ex parte contacts, no bias, and no additional financial conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Is there any challenge to Commissioners' right to consider the application? Hearing none, Johanna Hasty with the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. Johanna Hasty, Senior Planner with the Planning and Building Services. I am here tonight to present LU 19-0046 for the aforementioned improvements. I do have two exhibits to add to the record. Exhibit G200, which was a letter received in opposition to the general conditions of the athletic fields on the sites, but of course provoked by this particular proposal. I'm going to briefly address the concerns raised in the letter when I discuss the conditional use standards. In addition, we have an extra exhibit from the applicant. That's Exhibit F13, and that is an addendum to the utility plan showing an existing storm tech chamber that the runoff from the hitting barn will be directed to. That plan is from a previous building permit approved, I believe approved and issued in 2018. So to generally orient yourselves, I know all of you are familiar with the site, but this is Lake Ridge High School. It's zoned PF, Public Function, and it is located in the Palisades Neighborhood Association. As I've marked here on the plan, the area of work is in the upper northwest corner of the site where there's an existing softball field and a practice field. The site is adjacent to residential neighbors. As you can see in the graphics, you have residential neighbors abutting to the west, adjacent to the north across Cloverleaf Road, and also adjacent to the south, and I mean across Overlook Drive. The city's public golf course abuts the site to the east, and a senior housing project abuts the site to the southeast. A real general timeline, this practice field was constructed along with the original high school in 1969. In 2006, the existing natural turf was replaced with artificial turf. That was a conditional use permit modification because that extended the season of the playing field from what it was previously. And then in 2008, while the practice field was not a part of this, the high school underwent a general review of the conditions of approval that were in place from all of the previous conditional use permits and modifications regarding athletic field and their usage and their impact on the neighborhood. All of the previous conditions of approval were kind of consolidated, reviewed, and updated as a part of that 2008 effort. So here we are in 2020, and the proposal is for a development review permit for the hitting barn and then a conditional use modification to add athletic field lights to the practice field. So really briefly, this is a fairly straightforward permit when it comes to zone and development standards. The PF zone dimensional standards are all exceeded. The building design is specific to the hitting barn, and the design of it, the colors, the materials are all similar in appearance to other athletic improvements on the property and to the school itself. There is no parking generated by either the field lights installation or by the hitting barn. They all supplement additional or, existing uses on the site. For circulation, there is full internal circulation throughout the site. For lighting, I know the performance option for the PF zone is not the easiest to understand, but I did work with the applicant and the lighting engineer. And the staff report does detail how the performance option lighting standards are met for those field lights. And I think the applicant can speak more to how these particular lights are a definite upgrade from the other athletic field lights. The technology is always improving, and so these field lights should be a lot more directed and less impactful than even the existing lights on the other fields. And then finally, for stormwater, with that exhibit F13, the applicant made it clear that the stormwater runoff for the hitting barn will be collected and directed to actually an existing stormwater management facility that does have capacity for this small area of additional runoff. So moving into the conditional use standards, there are 4 criteria. First, you have to show that the underlying zone standards are met, and they're exceeded. There are 2 sets of use-specific standards, one for major public facilities, and then also another set for educational institutions. As outlined in the staff report, all of those standards are met. The applicant then has to show if the site is physically capable of supporting the field lights. And sorry, just to backtrack, the conditional use standards only apply to the field lights. They don't apply to the hitting barn, if that wasn't clear in the staff report. But with criteria number 3, the applicant does show that installation of these field lights is fully supported on the site. It's basically an electrical permit, and then whatever structural improvements are necessary for the lights themselves. And then finally, the 4th criterion is the one that I think is most impactful, or the most depth to review there. The applicant has to show that the improvement, whatever it is, can be made to be reasonably compatible with the uses in the nearby vicinity. So, of course, the uses that staff is most concerned with are the residential uses abutting to the west, and then, of course, adjacent across Cloverleaf Road. With the lighting standards met, that's half of the equation. The lights themselves, like I said, are very directional. There is no light spillover, even to the property line. There are 0 foot candles when you approach the property lines. And even to the west, where the residential properties are abutting, you don't have foot candles from these lights that even cross into the softball field. So as far as actual lighting impacts, I don't think there are any conditions of approval necessary to make the proposed field lights reasonably compatible with the nearby uses. But of course, with the lights, what you have is an extension of the number of hours per day that this practice field could be in use. And so that's part that needs a little bit further analysis. And of course, that's where the letter from the opponent comes into play. So looking at the previous conditions of approval, digging all the way back, to through the conditional use permits, which the front of the staff report, there's a whole list there of all of the permits that have been approved on this site. The most recent one and the most meaningful one is from that 2008 review. And that 2008 review came about because there were complaints from the neighborhood about the negative impacts from the use of the fields. And so there was an effort to go through and, like I said, consolidate and really kind of update all of those conditions of approval that the district has to comply with as far as how the lights are managed. And so looking at this report and this proposal, it seemed like a very obvious conclusion that these new lights on the practice field should fully comply with those existing conditions of approval. We don't want these to be out of sync, these lights to be out of sync, or use of these lights out of sync with the other field lights. And so our proposal is for a condition of approval that the scope of those 2008 good neighbor agreements, if you will, apply to these practice field lights. And with that, we do believe that the lights can be made to be reasonably compatible with the surrounding uses. Again, keeping in mind that as far as lighting impacts, there is no spillover on the abutting and adjacent properties. So to go more in depth on that letter of opposition, some of that is beyond the scope of this proposal tonight when you're talking about public address systems, PA systems, if that's what PA stands for. There are no PA systems with this practice field. The PA system is for the varsity field that's in the northeast corner. But again, those 2008 conditions of approval, those never go away. They might be modified, but right now they're still in place on the district for the school site. So it may be that the district needs to reaffirm their commitment to those conditions of approval, and we can hear from him tonight, from the representative tonight. But I don't see, again, with looking at this letter of opposition, with the condition that we do have in place, I believe that the issues can be addressed. So with that, staff is recommending approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commissioners may have.
Okay, do we have any questions for Joanna?
Couple of things. One is noise. I don't know what kind of insulation inside. I did read about the noise in the book here, and it just came up tonight as I was talking to someone. I have a neighbor that has a batting cage inside their garage. Walk my dog at night, and I hear ping, ping as they hit the aluminum bat and the ball. Hate to disturb the neighbors, but I'm just wondering if that's taken into consideration, that there is some type of, because it is near the street, insulation in the building.
So because the hitting barn isn't a conditional use, it's just an outright permitted use, I didn't do an analysis of potential noise impacts. It was a design analysis and then zone setbacks. The applicant could probably speak to any sort of insulation, but my, brief thought about it is that because it's fully enclosed and because it is including the right-of-way more than 100 feet from the nearest residence, I would imagine that any sound impacts would be fairly minimal, but I'd let the applicant speak to more specifics.
And then the next thing is, the generate increased demand, and it's a good project, but I do see, especially being a resident in the area, the parking on the street. Obviously, you put more athletic capabilities on the school property. I don't know if they have a master plan, but that increases people, whether they're, because of the limited parking on the street. I know during the school day, kids park on the street. If you have something going on at the football field, the lacrosse, soccer field next door, the softball field, the varsity baseball, now you've added the hitting cage. And it's minimal. I agree, it's minimal, although it says no, but minimal. Is there thought of at some point a master plan and possibly, and I'm going to ask this almost as a resident nearby, of the parking structure that is right above that softball field, it drops eventually someday, making that a two-decker parking with some nice greenery on top. But at some point, we need to do something with the parking out there. But again, what I see here, it says thus does not generate new or increased parking. Anytime you add anything, lights, people come in at night. The hitting bit, more, few, but more. But at some point, the school needs to address parking, because it seems we kind of push it aside that there's no effect. But anything you add something, there's 2, 3 more cars or whatever. But that's my concern. Not a big concern, I think it's a future concern.
Thank you. So when staff looks at a proposal like this, again, for the hitting barn, it's a supplemental accessory use to an existing use on the field. But what we look at for parking demand, we have very specific standards, which we look at parking demand for schools. Schools have a maximum student cap, and that's basically if they're not doing anything on the site that increases the number of students, which then comes with more teachers, more parents, more after-school activities, things like that, then the parking standards really aren't triggered with this review. We look at it to see if the proposal does trigger an increase in student cap. If it doesn't, then the analysis is really done right there. And to speak to the master plan idea with that parking lot, I know which one you're talking about. It does kind of seem ripe with the slope there to turn it into a double-decker at some point. I have no knowledge of the district proposing that sort of improvement to the site, but they do have 2 more bonds coming up. Maybe that's something they'll look at. But for this particular proposal, they meet the existing improvements meet the on-site parking requirements. The lighting stand, or the new field lights are the only conditional use on that site. And we do make the finding that while the time that the field is being extended with the use of the lights, it doesn't bring more people than, it extends the time that people are going to be there, but it doesn't bring more people there. So you don't have multiple things going on the field where you didn't before. You just have more people using the field later into the night. So as far as a parking demand, it doesn't actually generate an increased parking demand at the same time. It might extend the use of parking for a longer period of time, but it doesn't add to parking at a peak time.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Kurt, go ahead.
Could you just mention the tree?
Oh, sure. It's such a small tree. I didn't spend any time on it on a slide. Yeah, it's a 7-inch cedar. It was probably a mitigation tree for a previous proposal. They are, because the javelin, they had to angle it in a specific way, and they can speak more about that. But it's in the way of the new javelin runway, I believe, is what it's called. So they are taking out that 7-inch cedar. It just is large enough to hit the tree code. But they are going to replace it with a tree, a similar tree in the pretty much the same location. I did put a condition of approval on there that it has to be a native tree. I think they proposed an Austrian pine, and that's not a native tree because they're taking out a Doug fir, but it's just one tree.
Kurt?
I had a question on the staff report. When I read the condition of approval with respect to the lighting and the timing, Condition 1 says the use of the athletic fields shall be prohibited after 9:30 PM. And then, I don't know if this is part of the condition or an explanation. I'm looking at page 12 of 23, and then I'm moving over to page 13. Then it says, per the lighting standard below, the proposed practice field lighting curfew would be 10 PM. However, you could leave the practice fields lit with other field lighting turned off at 9:30. So then I went over to the lighting standard over on page 17, and it talks about, as previously conditioned, the 9:30 curfew will now apply to the new practice field lighting. So I was trying to figure out if everything has to be turned off by 9:30, which is the curfew, or there's a half an hour lag time, which I was getting a little lost on prohibited curfew, when these lights are actually have to be shut off.
Sure. Sorry about that. So the general way to look at it, very easy, is all athletic field lights have to be turned off by 9:30. That's their absolute latest that they can be on. And the only exception to that is the varsity field in the northeast corner of the site. They are allowed to go a little bit later to finish a game or to, and I'm sorry, it's only partially shown on this map, to finish a game or to do trash cleanup or whatever it is. So that's built into those 2008 conditions of approval. So the athletic, what I'm proposing, the recommendation is to incorporate the practice field lights in this. So even though the lighting standards say you have to turn it off by 10 PM, the condition will be 9:30, just like all the other fields, with the exception of varsity football games.
So the difference is that LOC 56.4.3, you can have it till 10, but the conditional approval will be for this project will be 9:30.
Correct.
Okay. And then, says, I think in condition 1AB, boy, there's a typo that says that shall be extinguished first and shall not be sued for security.
Where does it? Oh, I saw that. Thank you.
Sure.
I was going to bring that up.
As a lawyer, when I saw sued, I was like, sued?
I
No.
had to type these in by hand because there was no Word document from 2008, so forgive any other typos that you might see. I will, yeah, no. Really, all we're doing with these conditions of approval for this proposal is just making a reference back to those. The actual exhibit in there, in the record, exhibit F11, I think, are the council findings. Those are the adopted and signed council findings. Yeah, exhibit F11, so no typo there.
So we're using the conditions of approval from LO8 0007, and it has that typo in it, so it's like a
No.
sick keeps going through, or?
No, sorry.
Okay.
In my staff report, I had to hand type them. I couldn't copy and paste
No,
them.
that's fine.
Yeah, but the exhibit in the record that we refer to in the condition of approval is the actual signed document with no typos.
Okay.
I
Thanks.
can't guarantee there are no typos. I didn't review it for typos, but that Sue versus used is me.
Awesome, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, let's hear from the applicant.
All right, good evening. My name is Jason Gillies. I am the project manager for this with Cameron McCarthy Landscape Architecture, and I'm representing the Lake Oswego School District. So we have a couple little slides to click on here. I probably have control on it. Yeah. Assuming does this. So we're, again, just to reiterate what Joanna said is, okay, here we go. We basically have three key elements to this project. The first one is the hitting barn structure and the related walkway to serve that, the athletic field lighting, and the javelin runway replacement. So this is kind of a little picture just to show you the site again. The existing javelin runway is right where the new hitting barn is being constructed, proposed. We did a master plan with the school district just to evaluate where that javelin runway could be located on campus. And after that master planning process, the best location was just on the opposite side of the practice field, which is where we're requiring one tree to be removed. So I'll flip to this next one. This is a little detailed site plan. The blue shows the building proposal, which is right where the javelin runway currently exists. The yellow circles represent where the light poles are proposed for the field lighting. And the orange is the new javelin runway with one of those trees to be removed. And then the mitigation plans show that proposed tree. I think you've already seen this. Joanna talked about the structure, how it's complementing the other built structures on site. This is a good one to speak to some of the sound concerns. The building is enclosed, is insulated. However, there is anticipation that the door may be open from time to time, which is why it was purposely placed facing towards the school building and away from the neighboring residences. So if there is any sound coming out, it is mainly directed towards the school and away from residents. And that door is open from time to time for ventilation and circulation when athletes are in there. So that design consideration was taken into account. Most of the time, the doors would be shut, and it's fairly well insulated. There may be some sound, but it's under any required decibel level, and the team does not plan on practicing outside of any of these approved hours, so that'll be managed by the school. Speak to the lighting briefly as far as the lighting technology. This is just an exhibit from the manufacturer who's supplying the lights. It gives a good comparison of existing lights on campus. The football stadium has these sport cluster lights, which were kind of older technology. You can see they have a pretty big light glare. They're a little harder to control the light spill. And just, so that's kind of a comparison with the football field. The other comparison is the softball field lighting. When they were put in 90, or I think that was 2003. It was a little, well, 2005, 2006, somewhere around 2003. Anyway, this is the lighting technology there. It's the green generation of the light structure. And then our new technology today is the LED lighting system, which is a lot more cutoff. A lot of times we call this the field curtain. You kind of walk in and off of the stage. There's a noticeable line that the lights can be controlled by. So we were able to control the photometrics on this site, even though despite there is a hillside that goes and drops down to overlook, that was taken into account, and vegetation was not taken into account. So given the fact that vegetation could block the light, that was not taken into account. It didn't need to be because the light was able to be controlled before it hit any adjacent property. This lighting technology is also installed locally at George Rogers Park, was recently upgraded with the same lighting technology. And then this is a little bit more of a detailed on the javelin runway. It's still a little substandard for length, but again, the master plan identified that this was the best location, and the school and athletics agreed that this would be sufficient for their use. The tree that we're removing is just to make sure we can get as long a length as possible and keep it out of the fire lane. And the new tree would be put over here, which has a similar effect to screening from the neighborhood. And we'll take into consideration the species. And I believe this was probably answered already, but as far as the stormwater and utility plan goes, this slide was just added to show the approved utility plan from last year's improvements and the current proposal. Basically, the stormwater quality is still being treated through the contact structure, which is highlighted in yellow on this as-built plan. We're utilizing that with the new one. This was designed for the future hitting barn. You can see in the old plans there was a dash in there. So the capacity was accounted for when previously designing it. So basically the roof water from the facility is dumped into the rock gallery underneath the field for our flow control. And then from the flow control facility, it is then piped in through the contact storm filter for the water quality and back into the system. And I guess that is pretty much a wrap of it. Steve with the district might have a couple things to speak to regarding the conditional use, the concerns with the hours and impacts.
Hi, I'm Stephen Baumgartner, Senior Project Manager with the Lake Oswego School District. I wanted to quickly answer the two questions you had, sir. If you would, I believe one was, the first was in regards to the sound as far as the hitting, the ping. Currently, the softball team practices right next, their hitting cage is actually netting, and it's outside, so and it's lit, so the hours of practice won't change, and they're already hitting, so they're hitting outside right now, so it'll actually kind of help with that situation. And then as far as, what was the other question? And then as far as the parking, we can discuss it as far as a future bond. Obviously, moving that much earth would be a fairly significant project, so that would be something that would be a bond measure. However, I work in the bond department, so I can bring that up as a possibility to be looked at. And then the hours, the lights are not going to change. This field is specifically identified for practice field. The school does not use it for any games. It may use it for JV during the week, but there's not going to be any extension for lighting other than just for practice on those fields. And on Sundays, the leagues the soccer leagues or the park and rec leagues that have partial ownership of that field are going to be able to use it a little bit longer as well. But they're not, as Johanna said, they're not anticipating any increase. We're not letting them use for tournaments or any of that type of stuff, if that makes sense.
Any other questions for the applicant?
One question, is there a known safety distance between the end of the field and the building structure? In other words, to avoid having a runner collide?
Yeah, I think.
It looks close on the other photograph that you had.
Go back to that site plan. Yeah, the building is positioned about 22 feet from the end play line of the football field. Football has a 15-foot minimum clear zone. Part of the reason it's set back so far is also because there's a utility easement. There's a water line that exists in there that we've worked with engineering department on making sure that we don't sit the building within that easement. That easement's really not very clear, or isn't actually located. So we worked with the engineering to make sure the building was positioned far enough and it's outside of the safety zone for football.
Thank you.
I have a couple. Handicap to the hitting barn?
Yeah, the ADA route to the hitting barn utilizes the existing softball field, so there's a series of ramps that get us down to the field. This is a little bit of a small exhibit, but at least it shows the backstop. So we're basically extending the ADA route past the new bullpen
The
and then
bullpen that's
around.
there now, you're going to come back towards the parking lot with a retaining wall and then put the,
There's a small, yeah, we have,
Yeah,
there's a
walkway in there.
small
Okay.
retaining wall
All
because
right.
the slope is so steep.
got it?
So there's a small retaining wall for about 30 feet along the bullpen that was built about a year ago.
Okay,
And then the walkway, I believe, is about, it meets the minimum ADA width, but it's still pretty narrow. I think it's about 40 inches wide. It's a little less than 4 feet wide. And an ADA walkway is 3 feet, so.
okay. The lights are 70 feet high,
Correct.
and that, are they all set at field height? Or the ones on this side on the side hill?
They're all these, the ones on the side hill were moved up. They will be positioned right about even with the netting that's out there right now. So the netting,
So they won't be any higher than the ones that are set on the field side?
they're really close to the field. In fact, when we did the first analysis of the photometrics, we actually had to move the lights a little closer to make sure that they were away from the overlook drive. So they're basically 70 feet from the field elevation. They're right on, there's a little plateau before the hill
Yep.
really dives off. So they're very close to the field on the top.
Okay. These lights will be on during the football season for public safety, since people park over here and walk.
Yes.
Correct.
So excluding that, I still am a little confused when the lights are supposed to be off. I live in the area. Baseball field at night is on lots of times after 9:30. I don't care, but I mean, they are. So I think what I'd like to know is, how do I know the district's going to police that during the summer and during like now, that those lights will be off at 9:30?
We have controls for those, and they're going, just like the stadium is set for we'll make sure that they're set, and as far as I'm assuming the varsity baseball field is the one that you're saying has lights on?
Yeah, they've been on lots of times after
I'll speak
9:30.
with their coach. We have a neighborhood agreement that was put in place.
So it's 9:30 unless
It's
it's a
supposed
football
to be
game?
9:30.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, it's a pretty hard and fast, and that was put in as far as,
I just
Excuse me.
wanted to make sure I understood,
oh, no problem.
because I can see the football field.
Right.
I mean, the baseball field. I don't care, it doesn't bother us, but some people it might, and it's after 9:30.
The one good thing with the technology with the LED lights is they can be turned off, turned on, and turned off very quickly. They don't have the warm-up time with the ballast that a lot of the other lighting systems have. So a lot of times schools will turn these on and just leave them on until the 9:30. These lights, they have a little bit better programming, so the district should be able to utilize that and hopefully line that up with the use times, because they don't need a warm-up or a cool-down time, and the ballast doesn't get worn out like the old metal halide lights and some of the other technology, that the on-off will wear them down a lot quicker. So hopefully they utilize the technology to its extent.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can I ask a clarifying question of the chair? Are you saying that the baseball field lights are on after 9:30?
Yeah, lots of times in the summer, yeah.
Okay. Baseball field in the southwest corner of the site?
Yeah,
Over
just
by-
it's kind of clipped on over
Varsity,
here,
varsity baseball, yeah.
right over here.
All right, yeah, well, the condition of approval is 9:30 for that, so we'll just rely on the district
I
to.
mean, we've talked about this before, and I've brought it up before, and it seems like sometimes we ask the school district about stuff, and they're going to take care of it, and there's not a lot of follow-through between us and them somewhere. That's why I wanted to ask. Anybody else have a question?
I have a question. This is becoming like a park, and it's, a lot of activity. Are there restrooms in that area? Are there, and I don't know if there are state requirements or anything like that, but I know we're putting a new grandstand with restrooms in. I don't know if those are going to be open when, I used to coach the kids' lacrosse teams, and we'd be out there till 9:30 at night. Are there restrooms? I'm just curious, because I know you're not putting a restroom in the hitting barn.
Correct.
Reading from here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's no restroom in the hitting barn. However, there are two porta potties that I believe are there year-round, that are located right at the edge of the parking lot between the softball field. And those are typically open. I believe the coaches have a key to unlock them and lock them. So those are usually open during the hours of use, from my understanding. Otherwise, the gymnasium is the other place where the athletes have to go, but there are a couple down there, and then the addition of the couple of new ones at the stadium.
will have-
Yeah, the school is usually locked up at certain hours, but, yeah, I was just curious about that, and I don't know if there are any regulations on it, but, okay, thanks.
Will there be lights between the hitting facility and the bathroom?
I'm sorry? The lights between the hitting.
Right, I mean,
bathroom?
if you're using it after, like, at 5 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock during the winter,
Oh, I see what you're asking. So
if you have girls down there hitting, aren't you gonna have some way to get lights so they can see from the hitting facility back to the restroom and then back?
Is that path lit?
I
Pedestrian lights?
believe the path is lit.
Yeah, basically, it would be the same ADA path, and if it's not, I'm sure we'll have to light the, part of our life safety, we'll have to light the walkway all the way back to the
So
hitting.
you're saying you will?
Yes.
There'll be lights from the hitting facility to the bathroom?
Well, there'll be, because where the bathroom sits now is up at the top.
Yeah, I know where it is.
Okay, so the ADA route that's already there,
Yeah,
the existing lights that get you down to the field that'll get you there, our project will add in the walkway and the new lighting all the way back to the barn.
okay, 'cause I didn't see that on the plans, that there was lighting back to the barn, and I meant to ask you that. Because, you use it in the evenings, it's,
He has that, so.
you don't want,
Right.
girls walking in the dark.
Oh, no, and I believe life safety
All right.
requires lights
All right.
for us to light that, so.
When the field lights are on, there'll be enough to meet the minimum life safety, but with the lights were off on one of the fields, that could be
Yeah, that's all I was saying.
I completely agree that they need to be there, so.
Okay. I think that's all we have. I see a couple people here. There should be a sign-up sheet over to the left.
Computer.
They log in now.
They log in. Well, it's been so long since we've been here, we didn't have that.
Right.
High tech. Wow. Thank you. So is it the same form?
Correct.
Maybe you could explain it.
So we just took the form and we made it digital, so.
Okay. So you sign in and then note whether you're for or against.
Correct.
Yeah, I think it's easier for people to just check mark the right box digitally, and also we were having some problems with legibility. Not everyone has the greatest handwriting, so this is, I think, works out a little better for us. And certainly, if you want to speak, you can also fill it in afterwards, and if you want to get started.
Evan, do you want to now talk about the procedure of who talks when?
Well, no, we're waiting, if there are people who wish to speak either for,
Or against?
or neutral, fine, they have 5 minutes, unless they represent
Neighborhood association?
neighborhood associations, or et cetera, that's 10. That was addressed in the first openings
Okay.
read-through. So,
Do we have anybody other than,
we have a gentleman standing, anybody else?
nobody else?
Okay.
Why don't you come on up?
All right. My name is Armando Gonzalez. I'm a resident. I live on 1515 Cloverleaf Road, which is right on the corner there of Cloverleaf and Marjorie. We just had a couple concerns, pretty much similar to your guys' concerns with timing of the lights. I can agree with you, Jeff, that they're on way past 9:30. The football field is during football season. Lacrosse, not necessarily then, but they do practice really late. Even when the lights go out, they'll stay out there and practice. And we just had concerns with that same issue with the lighting, the new lighting. And he was talking about the birth of the lighting, and we kind of were wondering, being where we're at, when those football lights are on, the lights are directly into our house. And I'm wondering if they would kind of be the same issue with those lights as well, coming into those homes. Anything else? The parking on Cloverleaf, I know there's parking lots on the top, but the kids and the families, they use that Cloverleaf parking as well. I know it's a fire lane parking, but it does get congested there. And I think with that batting cage being there and being open later into the evening, I think that will be a concern, especially with the kids just coming around between the two fields to get to it. That's kind of where it kind of gives a nice caveat to walk through, and it's going to be closer, so that is another issue for us too. So I'm neither for it or against it. I'm just kind of wondering if that stuff's going to be addressed as well. So, do you have anything?
No, maybe the fire lane needs to be repainted because it's not very red anymore, so people consistently park on the wrong side of the street. I don't know.
Okay,
Pretty much it, yeah. All right, thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Seeing nobody else?
Yeah, nobody else? Then the applicant has 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Other than just to assure the resident that the lighting does, well, its faces direct down. There's shrouding all around the bulb, the LED itself. Sorry, I know I'm speaking to you and trying to.
It's fine, we can hear you.
And so, from your perspective, you shouldn't see them at all. There will be no bleed off the.
Go to that picture.
Oh.
Can't actually see the light source where it's going.
If again, on the far left, that's the football stadium now, and that's what you probably see coming through your living room or whatever, and that's very bright and I'm sure not fun. If you go to the far right, that little tiny line that looks like that's what's going to be, and that's the entire bleed off that you're gonna see off of the light itself. And there'll be the photometrics. I'll be happy to provide you. I have a card, I'll give you my information that shows there's a 0-foot candle that leaves the site. So there's no impact. It stays right on top. And I'll be happy to give you, and any other questions you have, I'll give you my card.
Thank you. Evan?
Okay. Is there any request to continue the public hearing for an opportunity to present additional evidence? Hearing none, does the applicant wish to submit a final written argument which would delay the commission deliberation? I hear 2 heads shaking no on both questions. The commission may move to deliberation, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Evan. Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's an excellent proposition, so long as there is a means to enforce the already agreed upon neighborhood rules, if you will, vis-a-vis parking, etc. Sounds like there's been a failure to communicate over the years. Maybe we just need to re-up communication between, I guess it's an issue between the community and the school board? Is that how it's structured? So I would move to approve the project subject to some kind of an agreement to just re-up the ante on that line, those lines of communication, if we're allowed to.
Are you putting that in as a motion, or is that your opinion at this time?
I would move to approve the project and then ask that there be some structure associated to improving communication for enforcement of the already existing pact. Is that reasonable to do, Mr. Counselor? Is there a way to phrase that, or are those 2 separate subjects? I don't.
Well, no, they're related. If you find that the enforcement conditions and communication in the neighborhood is necessary in order to assure that the functional characteristics are reasonably compatible with the neighborhood, I mean, then you're imposing that condition as a condition of approval. What I maybe wrinkled my face on is we're going to need some actual direction from the commission as to what you mean by improving the lines of communication, because that is then going to be the standard by which we're judging whether or not the applicant meets that.
So let me rephrase that last part to take action on enforcement of the already existing agreement. Elements of the existing agreement.
And you're asking the city to do the enforcement that they're already required to do. That's a code enforcement issue, and
I think
Then I'm quite content to move to approve the project. Period.
Second.
Full stop.
Second.
as conditioned.
Is there any other discussion?
So let me understand. As you're saying, the proposal, your proposal is to accept the project as conditioned in the staff report?
Correct.
Okay. And we have a second to that?
Correct.
Okay. Any discussion? Go ahead.
Just wanted to follow up on a comment you made. You know, just while the city's here, representative, I am concerned about the location of the bathrooms when there's no one at that. Being a coach and being with kids, and you're all the way over, whether you're in that barn and there's no activity, kids have to go over there to go to that restroom, or they're on the field and you send little kids, girls. We need to start thinking about relocating that to the center somewhere on the hill. I could see a place, but I am concerned, a safety concern.
Mr. Chair,
Bring that
if
up.
I can issue, and this is an issue. Of course, the role of the commission is to apply the standards.
Right, I understand.
Not to run the school. Okay?
All right.
So the question is whether or not what your concern is whether that affects the functional characteristics for reasonable compatibility with the neighborhood, or whether that's running the school.
So my only thing to add is the one thing that said was going to be done, but I don't think is in here, is making sure the ADA path is conditioned in there to make sure that it's lit. I mean, I think that's the one thing that, yes, we all agreed upon, and it was pointed out that, yes, we are going to take it down here to do this, and yes, we are going to light it, but we saw that we didn't necessarily see that in the actual documentation. So I would move if I were to move to approve it, make sure that that condition for the ADA ramp was actually set in play.
Before we do that, Joanna, is that code that has to be lit?
Yes, so there actually is, in the PF zone standards, an ADA pathway would have to comply with either the prescriptive or the performance lighting option. So I'd be happy to add in a conditional. I would put it under A1, little a, to ensure that the new pathway complies with either the performance or prescriptive lighting option for ADA public pathways. Does that sound sufficient?
Yeah, that's really.
And you accept that?
You accept that to your motion?
You accept that addition to your motion?
Yes.
Okay.
And the second?
I'm still good.
You're still good?
Yep.
Anything else? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. Ken?
Shear?
Yes?
But I'm sorry, before you vote, does the applicant have any comments regarding the additional condition of approval? No? You may proceed with the vote.
Shear?
Yes.
Polson?
Yes.
Berardi?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Frankel?
Yes.
Silent?
Yes.
Arthur?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We pass.
This is a tentative decision by the commission, a written findings we brought back to the commission on Wednesday, the 19th, because the 17th is a holiday. And I think Jessica wants to poll you on the time.
Yeah, so because we don't have any other business that evening, it's just the findings. You know, traditionally, we ask if you want to meet earlier at 6 PM in the council workroom. Again, it's just to adopt findings. There wouldn't be any other business.
That works for me.
Okay?
We can call you Kurt. Okay. So we don't have any business?
We do have one other item on
No,
the
no,
agenda
I
for
mean,
tonight, but
coming-
no, right.
So we won't be meeting?
We'll be meeting to adopt the findings, but there is no other public hearing on February 19th.
We'll meet again this time next year. Okay. Next item of business is the schedule review of management update, the review of the tree memo from us to the city council. We should all have a copy of it, and it looks like this. It says memorandum at the top. Have we all read it? Is there any comments? I know David and I made our comments earlier to Jessica. Anybody else have anything?
Thank you. I would just suggest at the first sentence of the very last paragraph, where we say the recommendations do not involve any code changes, I might suggest saying instead of do not involve, are not intended to trigger any code changes. I mean, I'm not certain what some future evaluation might provide, but they're certainly not intended to trigger any code changes.
Okay?
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was reading the first paragraph. I thought it was somewhat strong. It says providing testimony at public hearings, asking the DRC to require, you have to consider, development to be, and then we use the word substantially redesigned. Is that a generalization? Should we take the word out substantially? It doesn't mean that's in every case, but I was just concerned about how that was worded.
Well, I think that's kind of been our big bugaboo, is it comes in, when we look at the project as almost a lot of times it's deemed by staff to be within the realms of our tree code, and then we listen to public testimony about how they want to change the project to protect several or one tree. I actually, my own opinion is, I kind of like how it's laid out, because I kind of feel that's how the tenor of these meetings have been, and it sets up for the last part where it says, consider implementing incentives or other tools to encourage builders to work around the trees. And so I actually kind of like that, because I think we want to tell the city council that it's been a pain in the neck, and that we want to kind of push them a little bit.
And I think I use the word, I put in the word substantially redesigned, because if it's a little tweak here or there, those are easy to do, and we haven't been struggling with those. It's where there is no good solution, there is no easy tweak, but the argument by, maybe some neighborhood folks is, well, but if they redesign this, they could save those trees. They don't have to take them out if they move the house or they completely redesign that wing of the house. And that's something that's far more substantial than just little tweaks. So I think I was trying to get that point across.
Understood. That makes sense. Thanks.
Anybody else? We'd entertain a motion to accept the letter and send it up the.
I will go ahead and make a motion to accept that letter as is.
Or as amended by.
As amended by.
Commissioner Arthur.
Go.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Shear,
Yes.
Polson,
Yes.
Berardi,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Silent,
Yes.
Arthur.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may I just add one thing? When I do forward this to the city council, I just want you to know that I plan to put a cover letter from staff, because there is some discussion about the fact that one of the items, providing an option for builders or developers to request a meeting with planning staff, does have a fiscal impact. So I will probably have a cover letter that provides some commentary on that, maybe some discussion about the fact that we do have some room in our budget for our, we have a contract arborist, as you know, that we use, and we do have some room in the budget for perhaps her to provide some assistance. It's not a lot, but I think, I don't know how many requests we will get. So I will share that with the chair, but it will just be, again, just kind of addressing that potential fiscal impact and giving some options for the council to consider. It's nothing you discussed at your meeting, but again, I'll run that by the chair and the vice chair.
Ostensibly, that would maybe save them money in the long run because of the
Could.
reduction of contentiousness that may
Sure.
result from this.
Sure.
Any other business?
No, as far as the schedule update, as I let you know, there, on the next meeting, we don't have anything. This is unusual. We haven't had a break like this in quite some time. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. You didn't, I think since I've been here, it's usually around Christmas and Thanksgiving when it's busiest, so I think it was nice to have a break this year. I don't have anything on the immediate horizon, but as soon as we do, of course, we'll let you know via email and give you plenty of notice on that. So at this point, I don't know when the next DRC meeting will be scheduled beyond the 19th.
Okay, thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Fellas, anything else? We're adjourned.